There'll be massive spoilers ahead, and you have been warned. All right, so one of the nicest surprises about Avengers Endgame, in my opinion, was how wonderfully it handles its female characters. I mean, I haven't been this moved about a female character in a superhero movie since Monsters vs. Aliens. I will never forget the moment because it made me cry. And that's when Ginormica, saving the day in the third act, actually struck the Superman pose. And not like ironically or with a wink to the camera. It's just what she needed to do in that moment. It was organic, it was beautiful, and again, it made me cry. And I guess this wasn't as shocking because that was like new territory at the time, but I do think new ground has been broken with Avengers Endgame, which when it comes to female representation in superhero movies. So boy, where to go from here, Marvel, right? You better not just, throw down the gauntlet and then walk away. You got to keep going. But it's funny to me because there was all this talk about Captain Marvel, but this is the movie, again, where the real progress has been made. And part of the strength, I think, is that nobody tooted their own horn. But I'm going to toot it for them because it's amazing. And we're going to start with the stunning sacrifice of Black Widow. Now, I've seen a couple of people try to float out the idea that this movie somehow did wrong by Black Widow. That's ridiculous. And I'm going to explain it to you again right now. So when we first realize, it dawns on not only Black Widow and Hawkeye, but the audience that one of them has to die to get that Soul Stone, and I would be like, I wonder why Nebula sent us here. Okay, so anyway, because, Black Widow figured out that Gamora didn't come back when she and Thanos went there, and so you think Nebula maybe would have as well. Before she killed herself, I'd be like, and by the way, Hawkeye, just bring this up to Nebula and see what she says. So anyway, I got, very nervous that Hawkeye would chivalrously insist that he be the one to die. And, he kind of did, although I think it wasn't so much chivalry as just, he and Natasha are legitimately friends. And while I love chivalry, I think it's great. It's not like I don't have a problem with it. I love it. I think it's a wonderful part of society. But I think when it comes to soldiers, if women truly want to be soldiers, they can't cry women and children anytime a situation like this comes up, right? Like, are you in the field or not? You can't be chivalrous on the battlefield. It doesn't make any sense, right? It's like, someone has to die. Female, women and children card. It's just not cool. So I was really worried that was going to happen. So I was thrilled that it did not. And on that note, furthermore, to see a female character sacrifice herself, not for a lover or her children, which is, I think, 99% the case when it comes to fiction, to see her instead sacrifice herself out of a sense of duty, to her commitment to what's right, to wash away past sins that don't involve her personal life. These were professional sins. I mean, that's just amazing. It really means a lot. Then, of course, there's the fact that, again, many people are bringing up in a negative way that Natasha, her death doesn't really register with the team, or even maybe the movie and the audience. Well, I think the audience, it registers. Maybe not to everyone, but it's not the level of Cap and Tony's. Now, yeah, it's not the level of Cap and Tony's, and I think that's for a reason. Now, narratively, it's because they're mid-movie and everyone's still in a lot of danger, right? They got to keep moving. And also, she was a spy who operated in the shadows. That's where she wanted to be. She didn't want to be the center of attention, so that makes sense as well. Like if Captain Marvel fell in battle, pretend, not all the drama that's happening off camera, I'm curious, it makes you wonder what the reaction would be there. But anyway, I think it's also important because the way it's handled highlights how with women, it's harder for women's accomplishments and sacrifices to register. I mean, it's just a fact of life. I think that's changing, but I think that that's part of what's going on here. And I think the movie gets it. And that's really, really amazing. Then, of course, on a more positive, well, that's positive, but obviously it's a downer because she's dead. But then, and I talk about where they could go with a Black Widow movie in my video about Phase 4, link down below. But anyway, now let's talk about A-Force, right? And some people were upset that A-Force assembled without Black Widow and felt it was a bittersweet moment. But remember, she's a spy, she's a loner, she hasn't been on A-Force in the comics really, so it still works. Now, it was great. We got to first talk about Wanda when it comes to the other women in this movie, because it was so great to see Wanda get her moment. Finally, especially after it has become so obvious she keeps getting benched in the movies that even Okoye commented on it in a Marvel movie in Infinity War. So, sure, she is kind of getting benched again with the streaming service show, WandaVision. I'm actually, that title's starting to grow on me because it's just so funny. But hopefully Feige will still bring her back. Hopefully, he says this isn't a banishment, that it's part of the MCU. So hopefully he'll bring her back to the movies, fully powered and with her literal boy toy. It's like a full-size action figure. All right, so remember also Wanda is still basically doing magic a la Doctor Strange, which Kevin Feige has confirmed and still isn't trained. So imagine, with all this power, if she was trained, paging Doctor Strange too. Although she still has to do the Wanda and Vision series, Doctor Strange 2, although we kind of know that because it's still not dated. It's maybe a little bit of a ways off. Now, speaking of powerful, just like the Russo brothers got Black Widow and Winter Soldier, they get Captain Marvel. She did not, as many of you feared, take over the team or the movie, but instead offered powerful assists at pivotal moments in the film for maximum impact on Thanos and also the audience. As I've said many times now, that moment when they train the guns on the sky because something's entering the Earth's atmosphere at an unprecedented velocity, I got chills. I'd actually put that moment up there with how I felt with the Ginormica moment. That was really, really amazing. And I'll always feel a little bit nice about Captain Marvel for that reason, until Brie Larson says something else. I'm not going to let her ruin it for me. But speaking of Brie Larson, she made some really strong choices with her hair and wardrobe here. And I know some of you might say, well, Captain Marvel has short hair in the comics, but it was definitely a choice. And so it makes me feel that it's possible that a fanship, maybe also because she and Tessa Thompson are pushing it so hard, but it could become legit, just like was the case with Kurosami. Although, interestingly, Nickelodeon flinched and set Kurosami to streaming because of that development. Although I think that Marvel's having such good luck with representation, and if you could maybe dilute it a little bit with making Captain Marvel 2 an A-Force movie, I think you could go in this direction successfully. And also today, it's only a few years after Kurosami, but the years make a difference. Now, speaking of Valkyrie, it was brilliant to give her back her flying horse, making her not only more of a threat, but more stunning on the battlefield. Like when she came flying in in the first charge, I was like, she really stood out. And there was a lot of cool stuff happening on the battlefield, but it's hard to compete with a flying horse. All right, now also Pepper Potts wielded her rescue suit like a pro. As I said in my spoiler review, I have no idea where she learned to use it so well, but I don't care. It was great. So much so that I hope Gwyneth Paltrow can be talked out of returning, out of retirement, and returning for that potential A-Force movie and maybe Captain Marvel 2, because I think Carol would totally want to utilize Pepper as a resource, not just as rescue, but with Pepper's experience as a businesswoman and also dealing with a difficult male superhero. You know what? I love Tony. I love that he loves Pepper, but let's also admit that Pepper is kind of a saint. All right, so also, never before have Gamora and Nebula felt so much like sisters, because thankfully, thanks to time travel, that awkward period where Nebula dedicated herself to trying to kill Gamora no longer happened, right? So this Gamora is still hopeful that she can have a relationship with Nebula instead of being exhausted by Nebula, right? And also, this Gamora is still edgy enough that she and Nebula kind of have a lot in common. So daughters of Thanos, indeed. Now, unfortunately, while Wasp literally pops up here and there at the end of the movie, the MCU is still not doing right by the first female Avenger in the comics, which is kind of ridiculous. Hopefully, it doesn't take as long to fix her storylines as it did for Wanda. I think the wet blanket approach that she took in Ant-Man and the Wasp is, really not good. I mean, she even seemed like a bit of a downer when she popped up here. I mean, she can be serious occasionally, but she's always a downer. But I do feel for her a little bit because, all the levity moments go to Paul Rudd, all the science moments go to Michael Douglas. So what's really left for her? They should consider that when moving forward. Then finally, it's a real shame how little screen time Okoye and Shuri get in Avengers Endgame, especially after the success of Black Panther. Although Black Panther doesn't get very much screen time either. But to be fair, the first Black Panther movie was very female-centric, and Okoye and Shuri were very well established from the get-go, something that can't be said about pretty much every other female Marvel character. And so surely Ryan Coogler will keep it that way for these two fan favorites in Black Panther 2. So, what do you think of how the female characters were handled in Avengers Endgame? Share your thoughts down below, and of course, as always, you can watch some more videos, including tons of Avengers Endgame coverage right now.